Welcome to Inspiration Radio, Growth Principles for Humanity and Progress. Join us when we share information, wisdom, and ideas how to create an extraordinary future for us all. The future is open. We together decide what will be in it. Welcome to another episode of Winspiration Radio. Today, I often say it is a special guest, but this is really a special guest, at least for me. But you will, after this hour, experience maybe even a new world if you really get it, what he is teaching. I met him, or let's say I heard 2003 the first time about him. Someone mentioned him and said, wow, this is a great guy. I learned a lot from him. In 2004, I attended the first seminar. And I flew to Madrid to experience him. And I was so, blessed and really call it a breakthrough, really what I experienced. Changed totally my life, my worldview of parents, of everything. I was so excited about it that I organized seminars for him in Switzerland and in Germany. And even, coaching for him, calling my mentor. He was also in the film The Secret. It was also 20 years ago. He is one of the great teachers. You can call it spiritual teacher, but he is also really a great business guy and teaching entrepreneurs, billionaires. So it is a wonderful, collection of wisdom and information he has. But on the other hand, when he went to school, they told him, you will never really read and write. So he believed for a long time that he is not capable really to reading and writing. But today, he is one of the most knowledgeable person. He has written books, teaching around the globe, living on the ship of the world for years, and especially for Corona, he's working a lot via Zoom now from the ship, and he has really a blessed life. And I feel blessed that I got to know him and learned a lot from him. And in this interview, in this talk, I learned even more, and I'm very grateful. And if you listen carefully, you will get a lot of value out of it. Enjoy and learn from Dr. John Demartini. John, it's so good to meet you again. 20 years ago, we spent more time and organized some seminars for you here. And I remember a vision you shared at that time. It says, when you leave your body, then your dream was like a satellite going around the globe, and your message can be sent then from down there to the earth. In between, more people around the globe know your message, and it's a little bit overcrowded with the satellites up there. You still have the same vision or something different?
Well, I might have to give them all Ouija boards so they can access me, but I think that with satellites today, it's happening. In the internet, it's out there. It's that people have access to it as long as it's out there. So I think that's manifested. But I think, by the time I pass, most likely we'll be traveling a bit more in space. So it's very probable that we'll be, having programs from out there too. So that's just around the bend now.
Yeah. And another thing I really remember, and that is just in the modern times where the news are full of war, because of your teaching of the equilibrium, we will not have world peace as long we are not fighting another planet. So do you really believe, or just that there must be another planet then we can fight?
Well, maximum growth and development occurs at the border of pairs of opposites. Maximum growth and development occurs at the border of support and challenge, That's why even in the ecosystem and in the food chain, you have prey and predator. The prey is anabolic and builds you, and the predator is catabolic and destroys you. Peace and war, support and challenge, ease and difficulty, cooperation, competition. You need both to maximize performance. If you had prey without predator, you'd be gluttonous and fat and no fitness.
Yes.
If you had predator without prey, you'd get emaciated and starved with no fitness. But if you put the two together, they keep each other in check in homeostasis. And so we have two sides of our autonomic nervous system designed for those two things. But our amygdala wants to avoid the predator and seek the prey for survival. So survival thinking is I want to avoid pain, seek pleasure. But thrival thinking is the realization that it's the challenges and the pains that actually innovate and create and keep things moving and evolving. So you need both. And we've been talking about, peace for centuries. And but if you look at just Europe alone, and you go and study 1,000 years, you go online and go 1,000 years European borders, just type that in. It'll show all of the changes in all the borders of the countries and empires and throughout the last 1,000 years. And if you think there's going to be peace, just look at that video. And that's just Europe.
Yeah.
And if you study the Global Peace Index, which is studying 99.7% of the world's population in all the countries, and it has 23 major parameters by the brightest minds studying what is peace and war going on in the world. It maintains equilibrium year by year around the world. Some areas go up in peace, others go up in war, and it's constantly moving around because it's necessary for growth. If you did not have anything but support, you'd stay juvenilely dependent, you wouldn't grow. If you had nothing but challenge, you'd become precociously independent. But if you put the two together, you get maximum development. And this has been known. Just like if you're trying to learn, if you get the same information, it's boring. If you get new information, you can burn out. But if you get a balance of old and new, you maximize growth, boredom and burnout. Same in relationships. If you're looking for a relationship, I imagine you getting a girl and you say, well, here's what I want. I want peace without war. I want kind without cruel. I want nice without mean. I want positive without negative. I want generous without stingy. I want considerate without inconsiderate. I want, one-sided you.
Yeah.
Now, if you have that as a fantasy, not going to happen.
Yeah.
You're going to get a woman. You're not going to want that. That'll be boring, and you won't respect it. When she stands up to you and challenges you and banters with you and keeps you in check, and you grow, and you both grow, and you appreciate each other. You don't respect somebody. So that's why you need both. But we have a fantasy, usually wounded people that are angry at people that were challenging them. They search for the opposite side of their amygdala, and they fantasize about this one-sided world. They don't realize that the challengers are what made them independent. It's the supporters that made them dependent. You need both.
Yes.
So I'm a firm believer.
I remember when you just were talking also about the private relationship. I was a little bit disappointed in the beginning when I joined the first time your seminar with you. You said, "Oh, my girlfriend is not responsible for my happiness." I thought, yeah, sure. She is responsible for everything, how I feel. But then to learn, oh, no, it's just about the equilibrium and balancing it out, everything. And
well, imagine if she had the expectation on you to make her happy.
Yes. Yeah. Well, that's what I can try today. Yes. So much whatever. It will not work. I can do whatever. So,
no, my fulfillment is I have control over my perception, decisions, and actions.
Yes.
And so my perceptions, if I'm unfulfilled, it's not because of the world outside there. It's my perception and expectation on the world out there. And I can change my expectation and I can exchange my perception. So I'm accountable for that because then no matter what happens, I can turn it into something I'm thankful for. So I don't like to have false causalities and blame things on the outside or look for credit on the outside or look for somebody to save me outside. I look for the mastery from within.
Yes. And anyway, just if we dive deeper into this, we understand more and more that we're not really seeing something on the outside or experiencing, and also everything is anyway in us. So we have more the focus and get this right. So coming back to the equilibrium on planet Earth, a lot of people at the moment think about so much more war and everything because the news are full of everything. First of all, what is the good in it? But is there just an extreme imbalance now in, what do you say, perception? Because in
Yes, yes. There's a law of heuristic escalation. The law of heuristic escalation says that anytime an ideologue promotes an ideal, an equal and opposite ideologue creates the opposite to maintain a balance between the two, a balance of powers. So if we go and we look at it, let's say Israel and Palestine, at first it appeared in the news that, Palestine attacks Israel, right?
yeah,
And so at first people supported Israel.
yeah,
They thought, they're the underdogs, so we need to support them. And then they started fighting back. And then when they started to look like they were fighting back more than Palestine originally did, then they started supporting Palestine. Mm-hmm. So the underdog always gets supported and the overdog always gets challenged in order to move those back into equilibrium. But the reality is, as there was attacks from to Israel to Palestine, worldwide, there were supports to Palestine all over, demonstrations going on for peace movements. Mm-hmm. So again, the war and the peace mechanism, if you have a narrow mind and look in one location, it looks like there's an imbalance. If you see a broad mind and see around the world, you can capture and see the pairs of opposites that are quantum entangled, you might say, across the world. And that's what the law of heuristic escalation has shown. Heraclitus, 6th century BC, great philosopher, called it the unity of opposites. So whenever you create a position, you create an opposition, and they're always unified and they're always connected, but they may not be right in our view. So we may be subjectively biased in our local perception, but non-locally they keep an equilibrium. So I'm a guy that's been studying, global dynamics, and if you open your eyes, it's not hard to see these pairs of opposites going on. So I don't react to either of those illusions that the media sensate. The media loves to sensate things, and the more polarized they make it, the more people watch it. So their business to sell commercial time, yes, and to sell sensations, not facts, just fictions that make you react in emotionally, impulse, and instinct. Yeah. And the wisdom of the master is always transcendent to those emotive, impulsive, and instinctual responses that the masses love to respond to.
Yeah. Without going in the, we'll say, law of attraction, when we talk about risk or war at the moment, if you mention time before, the BC time, okay, I can easily go with it. But now, in the modern times, when we say, okay, there are countries having these nuclear weapons and everything, isn't it so easy to go out of this equilibrium in this way and really risk? Well, see it on a global, more universal scale, then I can understand it might be an equilibrium if this planet blows up. But
well, there's a thing called MAD, and there's a John Nash equilibrium, who's a Nobel Prize winner, who's in The Beautiful Mind with Russell Crowe, if you remember that movie.
Yeah. And
he created a mathematics, a Nash equilibrium mathematics, and the entire nuclear system was set up on it. So there's every time there's an escalation in the capacity to destroy, there's an escalation in the capacity to counterbalance the destroying. It's going on right now in Israel. As they send rockets, they got systems to counterbalance the rockets. Mm-hmm. So we've got a mutual system of destruction going on to make sure that if all of a sudden somebody thinks they're going to get the upper hand, there's counterbalancing forces to make sure they realize, are you sure you want that? And yeah, you'd have to be really psychotic to be able to go beyond that. And of course, that's always a possibility. But our systems are set up where there's counter missiles automatically counterbalancing things to keep everything in check. Yeah. And so, frankly, I don't sit there and worry about that.
Anyway, it wouldn't help.
Oh, it's not going to do anything.
Even so, if it happened, yeah.
Putin, people think, well, Putin is doing it, but Putin specifically uses that as a scare tactic, as a leverage process. But he knows if he was to launch a nuclear weapon, that nuclear weapons would come to him just as fast as they go out. Yeah. So all he would do is destroy himself, and we have a mutual agreement not to destroy ourselves. So no organism is going to annihilate its reason for existence. They're going to do what they can to sustain themselves. And so the missiles are set up. The second something comes in as a balancing, it's just like crime. The second the crime goes up, there's counterbalance systems come in and get more strategic and get more efficient.
But you're saying the moment it goes up, so theoretically, if we look at nuclear, It always starts with the crime, and then the balance comes a little bit later.
No, the more you try to counterbalance crime, the more the criminals are now looking at those strategies to be able to build the crime. So it's not, we think there's causality between these, but they're actually synchronously, causally connected. And so there's a non-local connection between the crime and the anti-crime mechanism going on. It's kind of like, and this is what's beautiful about quantum entanglement at the physics level, at the quantum level.
Yeah.
You know, when you have a particle spinning one way, you get a particle spinning the other way, and they're not causal, they're acausally synchronous. And that's what goes on these larger scales. So frankly, I'm not really concerned about it, because if you look carefully in your life when somebody's been at war with you, I just met with somebody the other day I consulted with that they had a massive media attack against them, and they were sitting there going, oh my God, they're attacking me. And then I showed him and I stacked up all the supports that were counterbalancing it. When I got through, he was calm and he said, I don't really have anything to be concerned about. I said, no, you got exactly, you have a whole bunch of people that are attacking you, and you have a whole bunch of, a small group of very powerful people supporting you. Mm. And the power of those few is equal to the drawbacks and the power of this many. And that's called the law of the one and many, the collective and the selective. So those are counterbalancing each other right now. When he saw that he was poisoned, didn't even react to it. He was like, I'll go about my mission now. I don't have to be distracted by illusions. So people get caught in subjective biases, and they don't take the time to look at the objective whole. When they do, they don't react, they proact.
And we have partly maybe not just a possibility to see it. Like if we Putin taking the war, there might be some negotiations in the background with the Chinese or whatever. We don't know. We can't see. It's not in the news. So we come back to the imbalance of information. But this is all on the, would say, material level. The law is, if I understand it right, not only on the material level. So the balancing, the equilibrium could be also on a level we not have the possibility to see with our normal perception.
Well, whatever level of seeing is where we're perceiving our reactions and our problems in the first place. So there's problems beyond our level, as there are solutions beyond our level, and those things are going on. I like what Stephen Wolfram says, disorder means missing information. Yeah. Because of our computational boundaries and limited understanding, we see disorder. Once we have the right question to be able to reveal the unconscious to conscious, the information, we don't see a problem. And a lot of things, I every weekend in the breakthrough experience that I teach, I have people that think they got a problem. And I ask them a set of questions, and they realize, oh, I don't have a problem. There's nothing there, that I had incomplete information. Mm-hmm. And that's the same thing that goes on that makes emotions. Emotions are a byproduct of incomplete information. And love's a byproduct of seeing the whole. When you start to see the whole, you don't have a reaction. You see the balance of life. And you realize that this is a conserved game. So what we do is we go through and we freak out, and we because of our reactions, and then we think we saved the world because we think we have a problem in the world. And we go around and give credit and give blame, and we do all this gyration instead of actually taking the time to ask the questions and become aware. And I've been doing this for years, decades now. And people come into me when they say, well, I've got this problem. So-and-so's doing this. I said, I had a lady the other day, she says, this guy's attacking me and hitting me and beating me. And I said, good, who's the overprotector? She says, what do you mean overprotector? I said, if there's somebody overprotecting and you're addicted to praise and peace and protection and everything else, you're going to attract that other person to balance it. Because whatever you seek, the opposite comes with it.
Yeah.
And she goes, I never thought about it. So I said, now go to the moment there's an attack. Who's the overprotectors? Who are the ones trying to support and keep you safe? And we balanced them all out. And she goes, I got the same amount on one side and the other. I said, it's there the whole time, but you were unaware of it because you were having a subjective confirmation bias on the war and the conflict, and you were having a subjective disconfirmation bias on the peace. And so you filtered out that information, and you thought that emotional reaction was reality. And it is your reality, but it's not what's actually there. So I made her look at that. I mean, she did. She calmed down and said, I said, as long as you're addicted to this one, you have to have that one. Because the addiction to one side of a pole of a magnet attracts the other pole of the magnet.
Yeah, I know you mentioned addiction. And before we just said, or you said there's a lack of information. But is there a difference, like just the lack of, I couldn't see it, couldn't hear it?
Perception, perceptually lack.
Yeah, or the neglect, really neglect, just I don't want to see it, or
We
addiction.
don't want to see it. We don't want to see it. That's why we're biased.
Yeah,
You know, the amygdala wants to avoid pain and seek pleasure. It
yeah,
wants to avoid predator and seek prey. And it wants to avoid shame and seek pride.
yeah.
So most people think their opinion of reality is right because their addiction to pride. And they don't want to be considered wrong. But the more proud they build, the more they attract the person who makes them wrong, to humble them, pride before the fall. And so then they are angry at those people because what they're doing is they're actually hiding the shame they have inside that's making the addiction to the pride. And they don't realize that the person that's out there that's challenging them is actually a part of themselves projected outward that's actually inside that they don't want to face. When they face that and embrace that, the person on the outside is thanked for revealing to the part that they've been disowning. And then they own the part and they get whole and they realize there's nothing to be proud of because pride is in an authentic state and shame is in an authentic state. When you actually feel love for yourself and you're not exaggerating or minimizing yourself, you're now authentic. So what's going on around you is to try to get you authentic.
So this is right to say, which is the wrong identification on with beliefs or with body, or in the end when you talk about addiction. Because the stupid thing is we dream of something, but we do everything we don't get it. So
Well, if you're searching for a monopole, a one-sided pole, pleasure without pain or positive without negative, you're not searching for a goal and objective. You're searching for a fantasy.
yeah,
And the opposite side of the pole comes with it. And so you keep searching for that which is unobtainable and keep attracting that which is unavoidable. And then you wonder, why is it not happening? Why am I not getting my goal? Because it's not a goal, it's a fantasy. And a
mm-hmm.
fantasy is anything that's not aligned with your highest value and anything that's one-sided. And anytime you expect somebody else to be one-sided or expect them to believe in outside their values. So the second you set real objectives and you embrace both sides of life, if I wanted a relationship that was all positive, no negative, I couldn't find it. If I embrace a relationship that supports some challenges that I respect, I can find that. I can create that. But many people are in their amygdala looking for a one-sided world and then wondering why the world's so tough on them. But the
Yeah.
world's tougher on them is trying to break their addiction to fantasy so they set real objectives so they can achieve.
You in your breakthrough, you call it also the collapse process, the two polarities, getting out of the fantasies. And I was in the seminar, 2003 or something, or 2002 or 2003, I don't remember really. But you did it before already, you do it a long time. Did you see over the decades something change in people? Or still is it the polarities, but is it something different in consciousness, or is it different problems today?
Well, I mean, you have new technologies that give new aggravations, but all distress, all distress boils down to two things.
Mm-hmm.
There's only two fears. There's only two forms of distress. No, the fear of loss of something you seek
Mm-hmm.
and the fear of gain of something you're trying to avoid.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime you're trying to seek something, you're going to fear its loss. Anytime you're trying to avoid something, you're going to fear its gain. Those are the two driving forces of the amygdala, the survival responses that create all fears, all fantasies, all of the distresses we have. Distress simply means imbalanced ratio perceptions. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
The second you balance them and you have an expectation for the balance, there's no stress because you're getting what you set out for. But if you're striving for a pleasure, you're going to fear its loss. Imagine if you meet a girl and you're all infatuated with her, you're going to fear her loss. You're going to be jealous if anybody comes in and tries to take her away. But if you resent her, you don't fear her loss. You hope she goes. And if you actually have a balanced orientation, you give her freedom to come and go. And that's what people want. They want freedom to be who they are, not who you expect them to be. So people today, they may have variations in the content of what they're seeking and avoiding. But those are the two fundamental things of human behavior that no matter what in time, a century from now, will still be there. Because what they're going to be looking for may be different. What they're trying to avoid may be different because there's new technologies and new things to be on the lookout for. But there's still the same principle. To the brain, we are still seeking, avoiding, representing prey and predator. All distress goes down to prey and predator in our brain.
So if I understood it right now, you see the next hundreds of years, it will be the same.
The brain's still going to function the same. We're still going to have the subcortical area of the brain seeking and avoiding. That's not going to change in 100 years.
you're not expecting that we change brain or develop somewhere?
No, because we need that. It's essential for our survival. Now, we may have AI, we may have machines that can go in there and try to govern it because the executive center governs that and calms it down and keeps it under check. But most people don't live in the executive center. Less than 1% of the world's population do. Most people live in their amygdala all the time, and they're living in survival and barely getting by and stuff because they haven't learned to master their life. They keep searching for that which is unavailable and trying to avoid it which is unavoidable. And the truth has never been in the hands of the masses because they're always wanting sensation. Yeah. They're wanting to feel before they think instead of think
really
before
they want it, or like when you were part of the film The Secret, and that it was called The Secret because we keep it as a secret for the masses. We don't want that they know it. Governments don't want that they have all the information. So is it really what the mass wants, or we just...
Well, the mass, by definition, mass consciousness is just like in quantum physics. There's a particle called light, which is spaceless, timeless, massless, and chargeless. And there's particle nanoparticles like fermions, like electrons and positrons. They have mass and space and time and charge. So mass consciousness is one that's charged, that's valent, that lives in the amygdala, that seeks and avoids. It's impulsive and instinctual. And the majority of people play there because the social structure depends on that. You can't have everybody a CEO. You don't have a social structure. So you have very few people that are enlightened, and you have a whole lot of people that are living in the illusions of emotions and trying to get something for nothing or whatever, looking for immediate gratification. So the masses are there. You got the law of the one and the many. You got the one that's very aware, and you got the masses that are not. Now, can you educate the masses? Yeah, but so too is there an education to the masters. Yes.
Yeah. But so we could go.
We just keep going up. We keep going up. We are living better than the kings did in the 16th century today. So there is an evolution, but there's still a social structure, and there's still people that are ignorant. I've just been in South America. I've been in Africa in the last month. And there's extreme poverty. There are people just surviving. And they're not thinking self-actualization. They're not thinking on this level. They're thinking on how do I keep from dying? And how do I get enough food to eat tomorrow? And they're impulsive and instinctual, and they're living in survival, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And those people are way more. There's about 1 to 5.2 billion people sitting there. So you got the masses that are basing in survival, and then you got a few in security, a little bit fewer number. And then as you go up, that pyramid gets narrower. And at the very top, there's a handful of people that are self-actualized and totally empowered people, very few of those people. There's very few Nobel Prize winners, very few Olympic medalists, very few great business leaders, very few social political real leaders, very few spiritual leaders. They're fewer in number, greater in consciousness. And it was Gaylord Simpson, and he worked on the paleontology, showed the same thing in evolution. As we move from many to one, from microorganisms to ever more evolved and complex organisms, fewer in number and greater in outreach. So that's the evolutionary scheme. The law of the one to many means as you integrate and start to create complex systems, you get fewer in number, but the complexity of all the cells inside there are equal to all those microorganisms. Yes. But we are still moving forward into integration and organization. And we'll do that with, we started out nomadic. We went to kinship, to township, to city, to state, to nation, to world. We're now globalized, and now we're going towards solarization as we start to go to different planets. And eventually, who knows, interstellar. But we're still going to have peace and war. Yeah. That's still going to be there. And we need it for growth.
But just on a different level. But like with the food, the 2 billion people, well, we have enough food on planet Earth. We have, let's say, not the best distribution of the food, or different business ideas why they don't get it. What is your take on, everybody is talking now, the sun is sending now more eruptions, and now everybody will raise in consciousness, and everybody will go from the 3D density to the 5D density, and then we...
Well, I don't know. I've been doing the breakthrough experience 35 years, and I still have people at all different scales there. And I wrote a book on helioseismology and the sun recently, last 2 years. Yes, there are cycles. There's sunspot cycles. They've charted them out for quite a few years now, and they do fluctuate, and there's maximum and minimum. But I don't think that there's anything drastically more than what we've had before. I think that's a bit. They go in cycles. So if you take an isolated period, you might think, oh, it's going up or something. But if you take a longer period, I don't think that's not what I've seen. None of the research I've seen shows that. So what we do is we take partial information, we sensate it, we scare people with it, and we look for somebody to rescue us from it. And it goes out there, and misinformation is usually subjective biased. A sign of misinformation is the subjective bias. Anything that causes zoom and boom or gloom and doom, just know it's incomplete.
Yeah, like I said, when we're addicted to whatever polarity or fantasy,
that's what sells. It's commercial.
The fantasy topic.
Yeah, it's commercial. It sells. If I told you everything is balanced, you don't give a darn. If I say the world's about to end, you're going to pay attention to the TV.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it sensates. But I don't pay attention. My life isn't about even though I'm on the media a lot, I don't watch the media a lot. Yeah. That's not because I try to fill my mind with the greatest ideas by the greatest minds that have been stood the test of time, and feed my mind with master information, not more masterful stuff. But most people don't prioritize what they read, and prioritize who they hang out with, and prioritize what they're doing, and prioritize the way they manage their money, and prioritize how they spend their time. If they do, their life becomes more fulfilled and more inspired and much more simpler and less chaotic. But they want immediate gratification, and they want to subordinate to outer authorities sometimes instead of being accountable.
Escape some emotional pressure. With a simple question I use for myself, what helps me, is this in my highest interest or my best interest to make at least a selection when I can do this?
Yeah, but the thing is again, when we still are biased sometimes in our. I'm careful about moral language because moral hypocrisies rule most people. Mm-hmm. And that means if I want to control people, all I have to do is promote something of an idealism that nobody can live by, and they'll feel ashamed and I can control them. Yeah. And these moral hypocrisies have been used for, there's a scholar, there's a priest called Priest Says No Hell. It's a scholarly video of a guy that they're interviewing. And he says, religions are in the guilt-producing control business in order to manipulate people with moral hypocrisies that make you feel, if I don't live this way, I'm a bad person. And then you feel ashamed. And then you go, oh, you do brain offloading of your decisions and give power to authorities. And so that's a tool. Now, the question is, if you're doing that, it's not because they're doing this to you any more than you're doing this to you.
Yeah.
So wake up, If you keep going that way and find yourself banging your head against the wall and beating yourself up, maybe that's a feedback to let you know it's time to go back onto your priorities and take command of and power your life.
Mm-hmm. When you say you, what is the you? What is the ego we created, and what is for you a soul or higher self?
Well, if the theologian would call it a soul, maybe from Aristotle's De Anima and Plato's type teachings. Some people will call it the self-actualized state. Some people call it the prefrontal cortex, which is the seat of the self in integrated neurological function. Some people would call it the authentic self. Some people would call it the I. The Germans have from Nietzsche, he has their term for it. Regardless of the names and language we put on it, it's the most authentic, integrated aspect of our being. And we could call it the essence of our being. We could call it the essential self. We could call it the primordial ground of our being. And we could give thousands of names to it. But it's basically the core where we are centered and present and single and, not distracted and divided and emotionally polarized. And that is the real ego. Many people confuse the pride, which is the false ego, with the true ego. And they exaggerate themselves and then they get humbled. The true ego is nothing to get rid of. It's not something you have to destroy. It's not something, even though they say it's a drop in the ocean or something, but the real truth is it's still individualized. Even it's in the ocean, it's still an H2O and a series of H2O. So there's nothing shameful about being yourself. And if you try to annihilate yourself and, sacrifice yourself, then you got to ask yourself, well, now I'm annihilating what I was once exaggerating. And that's just as foolish. Why not just allow yourself to have reflective awareness and sustainable fair exchange with people and grow your identity by serving and being in fair exchange with people around the world, and grow your identity and be encompassing, not exclusive, but inclusive.
Well, this is also this one for this level of whatever self-realization, or where we materialize, we are in our body. But when I understood Yogananda right, it was also okay, you can leave your body, but then there are even different kind of worlds or layers where you're still with your soul individualized, but then the big consciousness or the real nirvana, so we all go in the ocean and not individualized anymore.
Yeah, but the thing is if you study theology, you'll find it's a personification of astronomy and optics in most cases. So in Christianity, it was primarily, lunar, solar, planetary constraints. It was a whole geocentric system of the Empyrean. The highest heavens was out there at the sky, and it's very, very narrow. Then you had, something like Hinduism, and you had galactic constructs. Vishnu's dreaming about Brahmas, and Brahmas are galaxies, and inside there are stars, and there's different levels. Well, today we live in a cosmic web with potentially billions, if not infinite numbers of stars and galaxies out there. So our theology has to continue to expand. And we sometimes still use the languages of these ancient systems and hold on to them because of tradition and convention, instead of living with holy curiosity and continue to expand who we are, our awareness. And I'd rather continue to expand it and then see if we can't weave the languages of the past into the new models and put some sort of integrated model together. But I don't think, no matter what we do, if we think we're going to annihilate our reason for existence and say we're going to just be disappearing, then we're basically nihilistic and say that all of this was basically for the sake of what being what. Then we have to ask the question, so now we're all one, now what? And then you think, okay, it's done now. That's a finite of an infinite. And then that basically defies the law of the one to many. And there's one of the most universal laws is the one to many. When you got the one, just like if you're dating somebody, if you're dating many, you're looking for the one. Once you get the one, you're wondering about the many. And so you get caught in the idea, is it one or many? Is it whole or part? Is it universal or particular? Is it similar or different? And these paradoxes of philosophy emerge again. And that's why we sometimes get trapped in one model of a philosophy instead of seeing for the other side. And I'd rather keep the thing in dynamic motion and integrate and allow them to polarize and integrate and allow the thing to be dynamic. Because the second you try to make it, I'm finally done and we're now enlightened, well, then you just find out at the infinite. When I see a guru that thinks they're enlightened, I said, well, enlightened relative to what?
For me, this is also, if I understood, it's just like, do we believe in reincarnation or not? What happens is there a soul who leaves the body and can choose another body? So this kind of layers, I guess, understood from.
But even that process is still a geocentric model.
Yeah.
You go on the ground. When we're traveling in inner space, what's happening? Imagine we're living in inner space in 1,000 years, and we don't have an Earth to die and reincarnate and come back to the Earth and all that, and we're moving nonstop through galaxies. Those models of eschatology have to be reemerged, and so you don't want to get caught too much in certain eschatologies, because those eschatologies are temporary stepping stones to a continuous expansion of awareness.
Yeah, well, I think, isn't it what they would say so-called modern science of what is fundamental in physics? So it's not was a space-time is doomed, like it's they say.
Well, there's panpsychism.
Consciousness.
Panpsychism is basically saying that fundamental to all things is space, time, energy, and matter is still fundamental to that consciousness. And there are people that are going in that direction, and I think that's got some wisdom to it. If we acknowledge it and don't personify it and don't anthropomorphize it, it got great wisdom. And I know a lot of great physicists that are open to that idea. It's not an unwise thing. But again, we sometimes personify it in terms of human constructs. We think of consciousness as what a human does, but a cell has consciousness, and a tissue has consciousness, and a plant has consciousness. Yeah. Just take a single cell. If you take all the Nobel Prize winners and all the biophysiologists and, all the professor emeritus and all cell biology, put them all together in a conference. They can't figure out a single cell of a microorganism 4 billion years ago, how it functioned.
Mm-hmm.
So we go around and with our egos thinking that, well, we're enlightened or whatever, but that cell knows how to run a cell and knows how to avoid the toxins and seek food and multiply. And it's very complex, more complex than we understand in our chemistry today. So I'm a firm believer that there is a field of intelligence that's obviously there, and there may be some sort of an anthropic principle not designed for just humans, but for life, an inherent system to create life in the universe. There may be. Can't prove it one way or the other at this stage.
So you say wisdom, not just experience and information going on in generations. When you now see, okay, we are so addicted to our drama and everything, what would you suggest parents? We're coming back to Earth now. What, if there is any chance to make life for kids a little bit easier, that they are not going to all this drama, is there any advice, would you say, parents treat your kids like that?
Well, the wisest thing I know to do is something Einstein said: the greatest teacher is exemplification. So first, get your own crap together. Start living your life self-actualized.
Yes.
Then they will figure it out that that's how to do it. That's one.
Yes.
And by the way, making your kids' life easier isn't the smartest thing to do. If they don't have challenges and don't have accountabilities and don't have responsibilities, they're not going to grow up.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm not telling you to drop your kids off at age 2 so you can retire at 32, but I'm saying that, if they aren't given accountabilities, my dad, when I was 9, I went to my dad and I said, look, I want to buy a baseball glove and a bat. He said, great. I said, so I want to earn some money. And he said, great. He said, have you mowed the yard? Yes. Have you edged the sidewalk? Yes. Have you swept the sidewalk and the driveway in the garage? Yes. Have you done the hedges? Yes. Have you weeded the flower beds? Yes. Have you trimmed all the grass in? Yes. Did you clean my shoes? Yes. Did you clean your room? Yes. He said, son, I don't have anything that needs to do. And if I don't have any need for anything, I can't provide you an income. So I suggest you go to the neighbors. So I went, okay. So I walked down the street a couple doors down. I saw this unruly house. The hedges were not trimmed and everything, just a mess. So I knocked on the door and I said, if I was to make your place look great, do all the hedges, do all the grass, the trim and everything else, would you be willing to have you do that? He said, well, how much? And I didn't know what to do. I picked a number and it was a good number, pretty close. They said yes. So I did all the work and I got blisters, and I got bee stings, and I got sunburn, but I did the work and I made their yard look fantastic. I came back, I had the money, I went out and bought a glove, bat, and everything else. And my dad said, I see you got a glove and a bat and a ball. Well, how did you do that? And I said, well, I went out and did what you said. I worked and I got some money. And he said, well, what did you do? And I said, well, I mowed the yards and this and that. He said, what equipment did you use? And I said, the equipment in the garage. He said, son, you can't just steal my equipment and then go out and make money off it without paying me. You got to rent that equipment. And I said, well, how much? And he said, well, let me calculate it. And he calculated out, and I owed him like $5. And I said, well, I already spent it. He said, well, it teaches you got to pay your cost. You can't run a business on paying and not pay your costs. You will be out of business. So the next time I had to do 3 more yards to get everything up to date because I had new payments to him, and et cetera. And then he saw that I was making money and making less money. And because of that, I had a kid walking down the street one time, and another kid on a bicycle come by and was talking to me while I was doing the yard. And I thought, you know what? How would you like to make 50 cents? And they said, wow, yeah. The 50 cents in 1963 was still money to kids. Mm-hmm. So I got this one to push the mower, and I got another one to do the edger, and I got another kid to do the sweeping and raking. And I got 3 kids per yard. I got 3 groups of kids per 3 yards. I charged $5 and $9 per yard, depending on the size. I made a net profit, paid off my dad, and still ended up with a profit. So I had 9 employees, and I made $45 net at the end of the day, which is around $600 a day for a 9-year-old today. And my dad said, I'm inspired. Oh, you've done an amazing job. You got kids in the neighborhood working. It's keeping them out of trouble, et cetera. But you aren't saving your money. So he said, I'm going to do a favor for you. And he got me some coin collection set, and he got me a big piggy bank that was metal. Once you put it in there, you can get it out. I still have that piggy bank from 1963. I've never been able to open it.
Mm-hmm.
Worth a fortune today if I opened it up, because it's made out of really old stuff. And my dad said, now that you've learned to save, now you've learned to invest, now you've learned to make a business, now you've learned how to be, fruitful and serve people, there's one last step I got to give you. I said, what's that, Dad? And every time he gave me a step, it was always going to cost me. He says, from now on, you're going to pay for clothing, food, and rent at the house. And I went, oh, crap. I said, how much? He said, $7.50 a week. $1.15 a day. And I said, okay, I can do that. So I started paying him, and he said, but what you're doing is you're buying your freedom. Now you can go anywhere you want on your bicycle, anytime you want. All you have now is one responsibility: be home by 9 o'clock at night. You don't leave before 5, and you can't be here later than, it's got to be 9 o'clock. Everything else is free. You can go anywhere you want, do anything you want, have anything you want, go and work as much as you want.
And how old were you at that time?
How I was 9.
Still all with 9. Okay.
9. All that was during 9, the summer of 9, 63. So I'm very grateful for that. He gave me accountability, responsibility. He didn't rob me of dignity, accountability, responsibility, and productivity. He didn't give me a handout. He didn't make it too easy. He made it where I was the real world. So making it easy on them is actually making them accountable.
Yeah.
That's what you mean. I'm sure.
What you're saying, if I try to translate it, school and whatever with them is not really preparing people for the real life. So your dad really taught you real life.
Yes. Yeah, school makes drones, makes you get in debt by banks, get a mortgage that's tied you up for 30 years, get you a credit card so you stay in debt, get you a drive long distance to have a car that keeps you in debt because you're going to keep going car to car to car. It's basically designed for banks to make money so you can have survival.
Yeah. Now I get also a different glimpse. I didn't know this story from the 9-year-old, but later when you said, oh, I early left home and traveled the world, just had a paper from my parents that I'm allowed to travel, so I'm not running away. Now I can understand you that better, that he sent you, oh, I know you're capable of survival.
He made sure I was capable. So when I told him, I was leaving for California at age 14, and I'd already been living on my own from 13, a street kid. I told my dad I'm going to Fort California. He and my mom gave me a ride to the freeway to hitchhike.
Yeah.
And the reason being is when he left New York City, New Jersey area right after the war, and he was going to try to go across America. This is in the 1950s, I guess. He wanted to go across America to go to California. And he got trapped in San Antonio, Texas, and got an engineering job there, and then got moved to Houston, and he never made it to California his entire life. So I told him I was going to California. He said, go. I never made it.
Well,
go live your dream, because you don't have the child and the house, the responsibilities. Take advantage of the opportunity you have now while you can.
Great dad. So what we need to teach our kids, you need to have a different dad or something like that. That is really.
I wouldn't change my parents. If you're anything you're not grateful for in your life is your baggage. Yeah. And you haven't seen things whole. You're seeing parts, and you're judging because of comparisons and fantasies. Anything you can say thank you for is fuel. Why not stop and look at life in a way that how is whatever's happened to me, how is it helping me fulfill my mission in life? That's a great question. People want to be victims of history instead of masters of destiny. They want to run their stories and narratives instead of actually create history. Better to create history than it is to run your story.
Yeah, very, very powerful story. But anyway, I read that that's even more confusing or stressing in my thought that if I remember right, the teachers told you you're not capable enough, really.
Well, my first grade teacher, she had a big book, a double stand book, and she had a pointer, and we turned the pages, and it was big letters, and you tried to read, kind of Jack and Jill stuff. And no matter what I was doing, it wasn't working. I just could not get meaning out of words. I did not know how to spell. I spelled backwards. I wrote backwards because I had an arm and leg deformity. I had a speech impediment. I was going to a speech pathologist at 1.5, and I just couldn't grasp reading. And I got put in the remedial class, and eventually I had to wear a dunce cap and face the window with Daryl Dalrymple. And my teacher got fed up with me and finally had my parents come to the school and said, I'm afraid your son's never going to be able to read or write or communicate effectively, probably never amount to anything, never go very far in life. And so I believed that until I was 17. I believed that. So I think that's why my dad wanted me to be street smart. Because at 70, they said he wasn't going to go very far in life. So he tried to prepare me for being street smart. If I was going to go and work and do landscaping and mowing yards, then fine. But let's be great at it. Let's learn how to do it wisely. Let's make sure you manage your life and manage your money wisely. You're going to do it. So I think he didn't know how to get past the learning problems. But I didn't learn to read until I was 18. I didn't overcome that learning process until 18. But yeah, I was from 7 to 17, 18. I was a long-haired hippie surfer street kid riding waves and living in a tent and and underneath a bridge and in parks and whatever.
Yeah, but like your dad said, do it now when you can do it, and it's great. And this he is somehow it is just get real, and he taught you like street smart. Maybe we have it a little bit judgment. It's not the good part, but that is the main part in life, like you said. Otherwise,
it's real. What the real world's going to expect. If people are expecting fair exchange, if you're not willing to have fair exchange and you try to get something for nothing and you get entitled, you're going to get humbled. Because that's not how the world works. Yeah. And a lot of kids are. They don't have any responsibilities. When my parents dropped me off on the freeway, I thought maybe I could do that with my kids. When I tried to drop my kids off on the freeway, they got an Uber, used my credit card, and went to dinner and went shopping.
Yeah. Yeah. Somehow it's a little bit like also, I guess I understand that Kiyosaki is saying there's the poor dad and the rich dad. So in a way, you were taught really to be, in the end, to be an entrepreneur, even if you discovered it yourself, but he forced you this development. Really, really good. So we know what in school is lacking or totally going wrong. You for sure will not go out of work.
Well, I'm grateful for the school system. The way it is has got benefits and drawbacks. The benefits is I have a job because of it, because people are going and looking for alternatives.
Yes.
The drawbacks is it's making drones and making people average. Yeah. And I didn't have to go through that. I left school at a young age, so I didn't go through that pathway. And I got to an entrepreneurial pathway, different path. And some people, but it's not what happens to us as much as what we perceive it. Because I've got people I had this kid, he came to me and the psychologist was really screwing up this kid by saying, you've been abandoned, you're a foster kid. Statistically, 70% of those kids end up doing this and this and this. And this kid was fed this insane stuff.
Yeah.
And I said, listen, don't listen to that crap, kid. I said, come here. And I said, you know how to do the internet? He goes, yeah. Can you get on your phone? Yeah. He says, I want you to look up something. I want you to look up famous celebrities and famous leaders that were started out as fostered or abandoned or orphan kids. And we started looking it up. We found 700 famous people, celebrities. Sir Isaac Newton, for instance, right? Mm-hmm. All these people that started out as orphans or foster kids or abandoned or whatever. All of these people went out and did extraordinary things. And so I showed him this vast list of these extraordinarily accomplished people that started out just like him. And I said, buddy, don't listen to that psychologist. She's wounded and she's wanting you to stay wounded with her. Let me explain something. You're in this category. You're in the same category as Sir Isaac Newton, Tycho Brahe, and Bill Clinton, and Wayne Dyer, and I said, all these people that have the same starts as you, they went on to do something extraordinary. That's your destiny, dude. And nobody ever talked to him that way. Mm-hmm. The kid shifted his perspective and started to say, I'm special, I'm gifted. They've given me a thing. I don't want to screw it up. I want to get on with it.
Yeah.
Shifted the whole dynamic and kind of winked goodbye to the people that were stuck in their little boxes And most people are doing that. They want to use outside sources of why they're not where they are. And they want to have false causalities and false attribution biases. And they're looking to blaming the villain, and they're looking for the hero to rescue them as a spectator instead of a participant in the dynamics of mastery. And so, yeah, people, when I screwed him up really good because I shattered all his excuses.
Yeah.
But his life changed.
That's real, yeah.
It's a drastic. I mean, it was drastic.
Yeah.
It changed because he was now interested in feeding his mind really powerful stuff. He wanted to go and study and stand on the shoulders of all those people that did extraordinary things. So he started to devour all of their lives. And I told him to read about all these people because these are you. And anytime you see something that matches your life, write it down and put their name next to it. So you can go, and no matter what happens to me, I'm in that category. I'm with these people now. Shifted his whole perspective.
That is so super. I know your time is limited, but if it's okay, I ask a question about the personal development industry. Now, the secret is already 20 years old, and there's a huge market of personal development industry. You know, when we just talked to you, you just so change your perspective, or with how school is making people dependent. This is okay when I say, or can you agree when I say, somehow this big market is also just the same thing, selling people something.
Many times it's commercial. Many times it's commercial.
And it's not really.
They'll teach them the illusion until they're ready for truth.
Yes.
I can't say I support all the aspects of personal development because some of it is just victim mentality and fantasy land stuff. I'm not going to deny that the integration of personas into the essence of being is wisdom. And the wisdom to extract out of your experiences opportunities and to see things and take command of your perception, decisions, and actions is true personal development. I'm all for that.
Yeah.
But there's things that match the needs of people at different levels. So let me give an analogy of this. You go to elementary school, and in elementary school, you went to probably a time when you had chemistry class, sometime fourth grade or something. Mm-hmm. And you thought at that time that an atom was a sphere. Mm-hmm. And you had a picture at the front of the class of hydrogen, helium, lithium, beryllium, boron, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, went up the ladder. Each got slightly bigger. Mm-hmm. And then you had this little box that had these little red, blue, and white balls and things like that, and sticks to them. And you made these bonds and molecules, and you believed as a kid that atoms were little balls and you built things with it. You then go to high school, and the teacher says, wait, not exactly. Exactly. You actually have a Bohr atom, and it's basically with shells of electrons going around protons and neutrons, and it's kind of a solar system looking thing. And you think, oh, well, it's sort of from a concrete structure to something a little bit more abstract, a little bit more mathematical, but you still can kind of wrap your head around it. And then you go on to college and you go, well, it's not exactly that. It's quantum numbers and probability statistics, a probability distribution of where an electron might be based on complex mathematics, which is the square root of -1 times Schrodinger's equation. So now you go, well, now we think we got what it is, but that's hard to grasp. It's really abstract. But then you find out, well, then that means an electron is a probability distribution of some oscillating vibration. But that means does it have a space and time? No, it's infinitesimal. Well, if it's infinitesimal, how can it be wassailing in time? So now we've got paradoxes sitting at that level, and it's very abstract, and it's hard for us to comprehend. So we had to teach the illusion until they were ready for truth. Yeah. And when we got to the truth, it became more and more abstract, and it became more mystical. Mm-hmm. And it became non-locally entangled and equilibrated and more symmetrical and elegant. So as we did that, the same thing in education, the same thing in life, same thing in personal development. There are many out there that are teaching the illusion until people are ready for greater truth. And then when the teacher appears, right, the student's ready, the teacher appears, the next level comes. Mm-hmm. And then they bang their head against the wall with that stage, and then they go, no, there's something deeper. And then they go into the next stage and eventually get to a point where you realize there was nothing that needed fixing. There was a perfection. And all of your journey was a realization and a waking up to the magnificence of who you are. And all that was your own illusions of journeys, and people were selling you different stages of your illusion until you were ready for truth. And they're doing a service by teaching you illusion until you're frustrated and have to go to the next level. And you're giving them an ability to share that. And everybody's working through their illusions until they're ready for a greater truth.
John, this is a wonderful sentence here. I like to end the interview because the magnificence of nothing is to do or to talk or to ask anymore. Everything is super great. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
For your
Great
wisdom,
seeing you again.
for your openness. Thank you very much, and hopefully see you soon again.
I look forward to it. Thank you so much. And it's great to see you after literally almost 2 decades.